For those of you who are already big fans of Waffle Flower's Postage Collage collection, I have some great news for you. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and in today's video I'll be sharing the latest release from Waffle Flower's Postage Collage collection. This release is called Spooktacular. For those of you who have never seen the Postage Collage collection, now's your chance to jump in and check out what everybody is talking about. Today's release includes stamps, dies, and stencils to make an amazing Halloween-themed postage collage. But there are other items in today's release, and some of those can be used for non-Halloween themed cards. So let's take a quick flip through the supplies that I'll be working with today. First up, I have the Postage Collage Spooktacular Stencil. This is a layering stencil. There are 4 different stencils in the set, and each stencil has guide marks for an A2 horizontal, and it has also details at the top to tell you what you're coloring in, and even suggestions on the colors that you can use. Of course, you can use any colors that you want. It will always turn out fabulous, but there are some suggestions just so you get an idea of what you're coloring. This is the Postage Collage Spooktacular stamps. It goes very well with the stencils. There's also a new Postage Collage block dies. Now, this die set can cut out a frame, it can cut out the individual squares, and all those little shapes. This is the Spooktacular pattern paper. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch pattern paper pad. It's double-sided, nice and thick pattern paper, some really versatile designs, and then some definitely spooktacular Halloween designs. Next up is the pop-up star die. This is the set that I was mentioning that you could use for lots of different types of cards. And here's the small sentiments, moon and stars, to go along with that die. Some really sweet sentiments. And don't forget, if you haven't used my one-time, one per customer coupon at Waffle Flower, they've generously allowed me to offer a coupon code for 10% off your entire order, and the code is Rebecca. Now let's use this fun new release to make some cards. For this first card, I definitely want to use that Postage Collage Spooktacular stencil set. So I have an A2 piece of white cardstock down on my Waffle Flower grip mat. I'm using Waffle Flower shader brushes. Now the grip mat holds the cardstock and the stencil in place because you can see the stencil is slightly larger than that cardstock. So both are held in place by the grip mat. I like to hold the little bits of the stencil as I'm going through, just because some of them have tiny attachments at the top or bottom or sides, and so it's easy to lift them up if you're not holding them down just a touch, but you don't have to hold down the entire cardstock and the entire stencil. My favorite ink to use with these types of stencils is Distress Oxide ink because it's so smooth and creamy and really comes out very vibrantly. So here is the first layer, that was the background layer, and now you can see that we're going to be coloring in a little bit of some of these images. So as they start to come together, you can see that there's mushrooms, ghosts, a cauldron with smoke, there's a moth, as well as candy corn, and then a moon, and we'll add a bat to that moon as well. It's so easy to create these images with these layering stencils because all you're doing is a little bit of ink blending, and like I mentioned, they do give you some guidance on what your colors could be. Here we're adding a little bit of shading, so I'm using some Distress Oxide in Lost Shadow. And the next one is even more details as far as the candy corn and the moth. So I'm using really traditional Halloween colors here. I have green and orange, purple, and some yellow, and I love how bright they look. Of course, I will probably do another card with this stencil with my favorite pinks and oranges and things like that, but for now, I thought a real traditional Halloween color card would be a lot of fun as well. And Wilted Violet is a great purple for your Halloween cards. Look at how vibrant that is, and those ghosts with the cheeks are just so cute. I did get a little bit of ink in spots I didn't want it, That's where this Postage Collage block dies really comes in handy because I was able to cut out just the images. Next, I'm going to use the traditional A2 Postage Collage die, which cuts out that whole collage of stamps, and then I can just adhere down each of the blocks inside the stamp lines. So they really look amazing. They have a little bit of dimension because there's cardstock on top of cardstock. There's no ink where it oughtn't to be, and there's a lot of color, and I love those white borders with the punched out postage edge. So of course you can cut those apart. I really like keeping them together, and I love popping them up. And this time I'm popping it up on an A2 piece of black glitter cardstock, which I just think will look great with all these vibrant Halloween colors. So once that was done, I decided I did want to add some of the stamps from the stamp set. I love the little numbers like 31 cents, things like that. And then there are really Halloween centered images like spider webs and bats. And whenever I'm stamping on Distress Oxide ink, I like to use VersaFine Black Onyx ink. It's a pigment ink, so it'll sit on top of that Distress Oxide and it will really show off a little bit more than a traditional dye ink would on top of that Distress Oxide ink. So I'm going to leave this like that. I like the Halloween, Happy Halloween sentiment just in that circular stamp that we included on the upper right hand side. Next up, I'm using the original Postage Collage die to cut out the background, which is going to be white. And then I'll use that new blocks die to cut out a bunch of the different pattern papers. Here's where I'll have a little fun with color. I have that light blue that they have in the pattern paper pad in stripes, and then the grid with the green, and that really pale orange. I also wanted to use the frame that is cut out when you cut out those blocks, so I didn't want to discard it. So I'm placing a little bit of liquid adhesive all around behind it. I was able to get that nice thin line using the My Sweet Petunia precision glue press. I still get questions about it. Yes, I still love it, and it really works for me. So I'm popping up the entire postage collage on top of the white cardstock and that frame. This time I'm using the stamps from the stamp set on black cardstock, so I'll use some white embossing powder on top and heat set that, and then I will use some of the dies from the blocks die, that new Postage Collage blocks die, to cut out some of these images into shapes around them. And then there are dies that come with the Postage Collage die as well. So I used a couple of those. Those have that little postage edge to them. I'm using some black foam squares to pop these up. Since it's black cardstock, you won't see any white hiding out from behind, and I'm layering them on top of the pattern paper. So you really get to see all of the images from the stamps this way and the colors of the pattern paper. For this card, I'm using the Postage Collage Moth and Stencil set. It is a free gift with a purchase at waffleflower.com of over $50 while supplies last. So if you like this, grab it. This is a triangular shaped postage stamp, and then there's a small stencil set that will color in a really beautiful and cool looking moth right on that postage stamp. So I am using the same exact techniques. I just have a smaller grip mat down because I didn't need that gigantic grip mat for this tiny little stencil. And the actual cardstock piece is small as well. So I die cut first and then I stencil because there are guidelines right on the stencil that show the outline of the triangle. So you can tell exactly where you need to place your stencil so that you can ink blend the moth image. And I'm using some traditional colors and then some non-traditional colors. This way I can really have a mix of what I'm including on my card today. I love that blue background. It looks kind of cool, and I decided to add the little stamp that says 31 cents. That's from the stamp set, that Spooktacular Postage Collage stamp set. I'm also using one of the sentiments on this card that says "Hey Beautiful." It's from that same stamp set. and I'll turn that stamped sentiment into a sentiment strip. Now I have a strip of the pattern paper placed on an A2 piece of the pattern paper, and that will be where I'm placing my postage stamps. Now I've cut out a couple of pieces of pattern paper. The moth will be the center stamp, and then the pattern paper will go on top and on the bottom. It just gives me the ability to create a design that is kind of eye-catching and then pop up that sentiment at the bottom. So this is sort of a Halloween card, but a sort of non-traditional Halloween card. Next up, I'll use the pop-up star die. As you can see, it does not cut out the A2 rectangle. So you'll need to cut out an A2 rectangle and then place the die on top of that. And then you'll have all those pop-up stars available to you. So they are basically die cut on the sides, but not at the tops and bottoms. I decided to fold up all the largest stars and leave the rest of them flat. And then I placed some foam squares behind the panel and placed it down on an A2 piece of black cardstock. Then I have one of the sentiments from that matching sentiment stamp set that says reach for the stars. I stamped that in black ink on white cardstock, cut it down to a little slim little sentiment strip and popped that up as well. A super simple card. There's also a stencil available that can color in these stars, and you could do different colors, so I'll link to that in the YouTube description box below the video. I don't know about you, but I absolutely adore the Postage Collage collection. If you want to see my last video that featured Postage Collage holiday cards, you can check it out here. And don't forget that I actually have a 10% coupon. It's a one-time coupon, so one per customer, but it's 10% off your entire order at Waffle Flower. So if you haven't used yours yet, be sure to use the code Rebecca when you check out at Waffle Flower for an amazing 10% discount. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Focus. Description box. Nope. So be sure if you have...